In March 2022, Senator Marsha Blackburn asked Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson a question. Can you provide a definition for the word woman? Jackson said she couldn't. She's not a biologist. The clip went everywhere. It was treated as a scandal, as evasion, as proof of something. But here's what nobody asked. What was the correct answer? I want to be precise about what this video is and is not. This is not a video about the biology of sex. It's not a video about gender identity theory. I'm not going to tell you what a woman is. This is a video about a rhetorical move, a specific, documented, deliberate rhetorical move, and what it actually does when it's deployed. Because here's the thing. A question can be sincere or it can be a trap. And the way you tell the difference is not by looking at the question itself. It's by asking what happens to the person being asked, regardless of how they answer. In the case of what is a woman, they lose either way. And that is not by accident. This is a follow-up to the first video in this series. In that video, we looked at 200 years of history, 4 separate moments where the definition of womanhood was used as a gatekeeping tool. If you haven't seen that one, it's linked above and in the description. In this video, we're looking at the current version of that same move, how it works, what it does, and why understanding the mechanisms changes how you hear everything that comes after. Let's start with the structure. There's a logical structure called the Motte and Bailey. Here's how it works. You have 2 positions. One is defensible, easy to hold, hard to attack. That's the Motte, like a castle tower, small, fortified, safe. The other position is much broader, more ambitious, harder to defend. That's the Bailey, the surrounding land you actually want to occupy. The rhetorical move is you advance the Bailey in normal times, but the moment someone challenges you, you retreat to the Motte. You act like the Motte was all you ever claimed. Here's how that applies to what is a woman. The Motte is a woman is an adult human female, simple, biological, hard to argue with on its face. The Bailey is trans women are not women, should be excluded from women's spaces, women's sports, women's healthcare, should have no legal recognition as women. The question, what is a woman, deploys the Motte, the simple biological definition, but it's doing the work for the Bailey every time. And here's what makes it a trap. If you answer with a simple biological definition, chromosomes, let's say, the questioner immediately applies that to trans women, who in many cases have undergone hormonal transition, have different physiology, and whose chromosomes are not visible or relevant to anyone in a bathroom. But now you've committed to the chromosome standard, and it's being used to justify exclusion. If you answer with gender identity, a woman is someone who identifies as a woman, you are accused of circular reasoning, of not believing in science, of being ideologically captured. If you say it's complex, which is actually the most scientifically accurate answer, you are accused of evasion, of being unable to answer a simple question. There is no answer that satisfies the framing. That's not because the question is hard. It's because the question is designed to produce a loss, not an answer. Let's go back to Ketanji Brown Jackson. She said, "I'm not a biologist." That response was mocked, treated as evasion, as embarrassing, as ideologically motivated. But consider what a biologist would actually say. Biologists define sex using multiple frameworks: chromosomal, gonadal, hormonal, anatomical. These frameworks don't always align. Approximately 1.7% of people are born with chromosomal, hormonal, or anatomical characteristics that don't fit typical binary definitions. Biologists themselves do not agree on a single clean definition of female, let alone woman. Jackson's answer, "I'm not a biologist," was not evasion. It was precision. It was the acknowledgement that the question requires expertise to answer, and that expertise does not produce a simple answer the questioner wants. But precision was treated as evasion because the question wasn't designed to receive a precise answer. It was designed to produce a clip. Here's where I want to get more specific, because the biological definition, the one the question is supposedly demanding, doesn't actually stay biological. Watch what happens when you follow it up into policy. The 1.7% figure I mentioned, people born intersex, if the biological definition of womanhood were genuinely the standard, intersex people would be the center of every one of these conversations. They almost never are. Bathroom bills don't address intersex people. Sports bans don't create a separate category for intersex athletes. Healthcare restrictions don't grapple with intersex healthcare needs in any of these policy debates. The people asking what is a woman with urgency and alarm are not asking about intersex people. The biology that gets invoked disappears the moment it becomes inconvenient. Look at the sports argument specifically. When what is a woman is applied to athletic competition, the definition shifts constantly. Sometimes it's chromosomes, sometimes it's testosterone levels, sometimes it's bone density, sometimes it's the condition under which puberty occurred. The definition changes based on what produces the desired exclusion in that specific context. That's not biology, that's politics using biology as a vocabulary. And if you look at the major legislation, the bathroom bills, the sports participation bans, the healthcare restrictions, they each define woman or female differently. Some use chromosomes, some use birth certificates, some use anatomy at birth, some allow for changes to legal documents, some do not. The definition is not fixed, it is instrumental. It changes to ensure the right people are excluded in each specific context. If this were genuinely about biology, the definition would be consistent. It would be applied by biologists, not legislators. It would look the same across every policy context. It doesn't, because it isn't. The question, what is a woman, is not asked neutrally. It is directed at specific targets, and it functions to delegitimize those targets regardless of their answer. Politicians first. Democratic politicians are asked this question almost exclusively, not Republican ones. This is not a philosophical inquiry distributed evenly across this political spectrum. It is an opposition research tool. Experts second. Gender studies, academics, and biologists who give nuanced, accurate answers are treated as proof of ideological capture, not as experts providing accurate information, as proof that expertise itself has become corrupted. The more precise the answer, the more evasive it appears in a 30-second clip. This is deliberate. The clip economy rewards the performance of the question over the substance of the answer. Charlie Kirk did this, Matt Walsh does this, Candace Owens does this. The documentary What is a Woman, released in 2022, follows this exact format. It asks philosophers, psychologists, pediatricians, and tribal elders the question. It treats their inability to give a single clean biological answer as evidence of absurdity, without acknowledging that biologists themselves don't give a single clean biological answer, without acknowledging that the film defines woman implicitly through the framing, the music, the editing, without ever having to defend the definition. And trans people, third. When a trans woman is asked, what is a woman? The implied answer, someone like me, is treated as either delusional or circular. She is asked to define a category the questioner has already decided she doesn't belong to. She cannot win, not because her answer is wrong, but because the question has already ruled her out. Notice what all of these targets have in common. They are people whose credibility the questioner wants to damage, and the question does that damage, regardless of the answer, because the goal was never the answer. If you watched the first video in the series, this structure should feel familiar. Let me run through it quickly. 1848. The debate is about voting rights. The definition of true womanhood is invoked: pious, pure, domestic, submissive. The definition is used by some suffragists to argue that educated white women deserve the vote more than black men who already have it. The definition of womanhood is drawn to exclude along racial and class lines. 1875. The debate is about immigration. The Page Act defines proper womanhood through moral standards, and applies those standards almost exclusively to Chinese women. Dramatically less are admitted. The definition of womanhood becomes a racial border. 1920. Women get the vote, but woman who can vote remains a racialized category in practice. Poll taxes and literacy tests ensure black women are excluded. The definition adjusts to preserve the exclusion. 1960s through the 1980s, the DSM lists homosexuality as a mental disorder. Women who reject domestic roles, who are politically active, who don't conform to gender norms, they're pathologized. The definition of healthy womanhood does the same work as the legal definition. Now, the debate is about trans rights. The definition of biological womanhood is invoked with urgency, and the definition is drawn in legislation, in policy, in rhetoric, to exclude trans women. The form is identical. Step 1, a rights question emerges. Who gets access? Who gets to participate? Step 2, the definition of womanhood is invoked urgently, as though the answer is obvious. Step 3, the definition, when examined, excludes exactly the people the questioner wanted to exclude. 200 years. Same move. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern, and patterns are evidence. So, let's name it. Clearly, precisely, without hedging. What is a woman is not being asked because someone wants a definition. It's being asked because the question, the act of asking it, the ability to answer it to the questioner's satisfaction, does political work. It signals that the people who can't answer simply are confused, ideological, captured by theory. It signals that the people asking have common sense on their side, that they see clearly what others are pretending not to see. It manufactures a division between people who know what women are and people who don't. And once you've manufactured that division, once you've made knowing what a woman is into a political identity, you can use that identity to justify almost any policy, any exclusion, any restriction. We're just protecting women. We're just being clear about what a woman is. We're just following the science. The question has done its work. The exclusion already looks like common sense. That's what the question does. That's what it's for. It's not a question. It's an apparatus. I want to end here. If someone asks you, what is a woman? You now have more tools than you did before. You can ask, why is this question being asked right now? Who is asking it? What happens to the person being asked regardless of their answer? Does the definition being demanded stay consistent, or does it shift depending on what exclusion is needed? Those questions don't tell you what a woman is, but they do tell you something more useful. They tell you what the question is actually doing. And knowing that, really knowing that, changes how you hear everything that comes after.